إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه ومن صار على سبيله إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So in continuing the ending of the book of Hajj from Manhaj as-salikeen, we started to discuss it last lesson. And of the things that we mentioned up until the point from the hadith of Jabir anhu, from the point of al-jamarat. Now, so of the things that's mentioned, then ثم سلك الطريقة الوسطى التي تخرج على الجمرة الكبرى. Then the Prophet Muhammad would follow the middle path, the middle road, which will come out at the biggest jamarat. حتى أتى الجمرة التي عند الشجرة فرماها بسبع حصيات يكبر مع كل حصاة منها. So when he came to the jamara that was at the tree, near the tree, he then threw 7 small pebbles at it. But every time you throw a pebble, you say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, each time that you do it. مثل حصى الخذف, it mentions and similar to the type of stones that it is. They're very small pebbles. And as I mentioned last time, usually people collect them when they're around Muzdalifah. In the Al-Mabit and Al-Muzdalifah, you find most people picking up the pebbles from there. And it's like this, so that's what it means. مثل الحصى الخذف is like this. It's like this. You know what you see people doing the most. It's not that you throwing excessively, going into extravagance. You have people that do many different things. Wallahu musta'an. رمى من بطن الوادي. He said he did this from the bottom of the valley. ثم انصرف على المنحر, and then he would go to the place of sacrifice. فنحر 63 بيده. I mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ sacrificed 63 camels with his own hand. ثم أعطى عليا فنحر ما غبر وأشركه في هديه. He mentioned then he gave the remaining, the Prophet ﷺ gave the remaining number to Ali, who sacrificed them and shared with him in his sacrifice. ثم أمر من كل بدنة ببدعة فجعلت في قدر وطبخت فأكل من لحمها وشرب من مرقها. And he mentioned that the Prophet commanded that a piece of each of the sacrificed animals should be put in a pot, and when it was cooked, both of them, the Prophet and Ali, took some meat of it and drank of his soup. ثم ركب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فأفاض إلى البيت, and then he mounted his camel and then he came to the Kaaba. فصلى بمكة الظهر, and he prayed dhuhr at Mecca. فأتى بني عبد المطلب يسقون على زمزم فقال انزعوا بني عبد المطلب فلولا أن يغلبكم الناس على سقايتكم لنزعت معكم فناولوه دلوا فشرب منه. رواه مسلم. So when he came to the tribe of Abdul Muttalib, who was supplying water at Zamzam, and said, draw water, I take water, O tribe of Abdul Muttalib, were it not that the people would usurp this right of supplying water from you, I would have drawn it along with you. So they handed him a bucket and he drank from it. So it also shows the virtue of the people of Bani Abdul Muttalib, that they were supplying the water for the Hujjaj. They were supplying and distributing the water for those who were performing Hajj during that time. So after the Jamarat, you find the Prophet would go back to the Kaaba. And then وكان صلى الله عليه وسلم يفعل المناسك يقول للناس خذوا عني مناسككم فأكمل ما يكون من الحج الاقتداء بالنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فيه وأصحابه رضي الله عنهم. So I mentioned, and such is the way that the Prophet ﷺ would perform the rites of Hajj, and he would say to the people, take from me your rituals of Hajj. So the most complete way of performing Hajj is following the way of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his companions. وَلَوْ اقْتَصَرَ الْحَاجُّ عَلَى, if the person that is doing Hajj themselves were to restrict themselves to the following, the 4 pillars, which is Ihram, Wuquf bil-Arafah, standing on Arafah, At-Tawaf, and As-Sa'i, these are the 4 pillars, then that would suffice them. وَالْوَاجِبَاتَ الَّتِي هِيَ, and the 6 obligations, and they are Al-Ihramu min al-Miqat, to be in a state of Ihram from the Miqat, Al-Wuqufu bi-Arafah ila al-Ghurub, to stand at Arafah until Maghrib. وَالْمَبِيتُ لَيْلَةَ النَّحْرِ بِمُزْدَلِفَةٍ, and in the night of sacrifice, or the night before sacrifice, to stay at Muzdalifah. وَلَيَالِ أَيَّامَ التَّشْرِيقِ بِمِنَى, and staying in the days of Tashriq, the Ayyam al-Tashriq after Eid, at Mina. And you have to stay at least 2 days. You can stay up to 3 days, but minimum you have to stay 2 days at Mina for the Ayyam al-Tashriq. وَرَمْيُ الْجِمَارِ, any stoning, and وَحَلْقُ أو التَّخْسِيرِ لَأَجْزَأُهُ ذَلك, and if they either shave completely or trim, that would suffice them. الفرق بين ترك الركن في الحاج وترك الواجب. Now the difference between leaving off something that is a pillar during Hajj and leaving off something that is wajib, an obligation. ترك الركن لا يصح حجه حتى يفعله على صفته الشرعية. The one who leaves off a pillar of Hajj, their Hajj is not correct until they fulfill it. أما ترك الواجب حجه صحيح وعليه إثم ودم لتركه. The one who leaves off a wajib, their Hajj is correct, but upon them they're sinful, and they have to sacrifice as an expiation. They have to sacrifice, and the sacrifice is to be done in Mecca, and the meat is distributed to the fuqara of Mecca, and you're not allowed to eat from that. Now, ويخير من يريد الإحرام بين التمتع وهو أفضل والقران والإفراد. And the person who wants to be in a state of Ihram, that chooses between at-tamattu', and that is the best one. As we mentioned last time, the better way of performing Hajj, the most preferred is at-tamattu', which means you perform Umrah, and then you come out of the state of Ihram, then you enter in the state of the Ihram in Yawm al-Tarwiyah, the 8th day of the Hijjah. You enter back into the state of Ihram to perform Hajj. That is the better one that the Prophet mentioned. Had I known what I know now, that's what I would have done. And we mentioned Al-Qiran is when you bring your sacrifice with you, so you stay in the state of Ihram. No.
So you start Hajj on the 8th day of the Hijjah?
That's the day of Tarwiyah.
Tarwiyah.
That's the day of Tarwiyah, and then you make your way to Arafah.
Sorry, my ignorance. What's Tarwiyah?
Tarwiyah is drinking. It comes from drinking.
Okay.
No. But it's the 8th day of the Hijjah. التمتع, as you mentioned, هو أن يحرم بالعمرة في أشهر الحج ويفرغ منها ثم يحرم بالحج من عامه. So a person performs Umrah in the days of Hajj, the Ashhur al-Hajj, the months of Hajj, and then they come out of the state of Ihram after performing Umrah and then re-enter the state of Ihram to perform Hajj. وعليه دم إن لم يكن من حاضر المسجد الحرام. And upon a person is blood if they are not from if they're not from those who are present in the Masjid al-Haram. والإفراد هو أن يحرم بالحج مفردا. As for ifrad, that's one who does enters the state of ihram for hajj only. Then al-qiran أن يحرم بهما معا is that a person is in a state of ihram to perform both umrah and hajj, so they don't come out of the state of ihram. نعم. أو يحرم بالعمرة ثم يدخل الحج عليها قبل الشروع في طوافها. Or a person enters the state of ihram for umrah and then also for hajj before starting to do tawaf. Of the things that is mentioned, ويضطر المتمتع إلى هذه الصفة, the one who opts for tamattu', the one that is with umrah and then coming out of ihram and then enter into ihram for hajj, then they have to adopt the methodology of qiran if one was worried that they would miss standing at Arafah due to being preoccupied by performing an umrah, or if a woman menstruated or had postnatal bleeding whilst knowing she would not become pure prior to the time of standing at Arafah. So then they would stay in the state of ihram. The actions of the mufrid and the qarin are the same, however the qarin must offer a sacrifice, which the mufrid doesn't. The one who's doing qiran, they have to offer a sacrifice. As for who's doing ifrad, they don't have to.
Sorry. What's the difference between Quran and...
We've mentioned this, we mentioned today as well. Qiran is one who comes with their sacrifice. They make intention for ihram for both umrah and hajj. They stay in ihram. Right. The muhrim must avoid the following matters. One who's in a state of ihram, you have to stay away from the following things. One, removing anything from the body, hair, nails, to wear any tailored clothes, any clothes that has stitches. You only wear the libas of ihram if you're a man. As for women, you wear your normal clothes according to the sharia. Men are not to cover their head. Perfume is not to be applied by both men and women. It's prohibited upon the muhrim to hunt or to assist or direct a person towards hunting. All of that is to be avoided.
No miss.
It's perfume.
Perfume, really?
No perfume. No. The most important matter as well to stay away from is sexual intercourse between married couples. This invalidates the hajj completely, and a person will have to offer a camel in sacrifice, and this invalidates the whole hajj. The other things you'll be able to do expiation for what you've done, but as for intercourse, that invalidates the whole hajj. You cannot continue the hajj. Your hajj is broken. Now, that shows the severity of falling into that action during the time of being in a state of ihram. Amma fidyatul adha, as for the expiation for violating the states of ihram, for example, if you cover your hair, wear tailored clothing, or a woman covers her face or wears gloves or uses perfume, they are given a choice of following: fasting 3 days, or feed 6 poor people, or slaughter a sheep. You have a choice between those 3 options of al-kafara. If a person kills game as hunts, then either you offer in sacrifice an animal similar to the one that was killed, or to estimate the value of the killed game and buy food with the amount to feed the poor, giving each person a handful of wheat or half a sa' of something else. If one is unable to feed the poor, they should fast a day for each poor person they were meant to feed. So again, those are the options that a person has for expiation if you hunted. As for the sacrificial animals offered for tamattu and qiran, they must fulfill the conditions for the animal that's offered for udhiyah. As for the ifrad, it's not upon them. As for who's doing tamattu or qiran, then there are certain characteristics of the animal that is to be sacrificed. If one is not able to find a sacrificial animal, then they should fast 10 days. 3 days in Hajj. It's permissible to do this fast on the days of Tashriq. That's an exception, because normally you're not meant to fast the days of Tashriq. Then the remaining 7 should be done once a person returns back to their home. The same ruling is given if a person leaves out an obligation, or if a person is required to pay the fidya due to intercourse. Every sacrifice or food that is given as expiation and is associated with the sacred, with the haram or the ihram, is to be given to the poor of the haram, whether they are residents or visitors of the haram. So it's within the haram that you give the sacrificed meat to. And fasting can be done anywhere. It doesn't have to be in the haram. You can fast anywhere. It's recommended to eat from the sacrificial animal that you've sacrificed, for those who are doing tamattu and qiran and hadi, as well as to give some way as a gift and as charity. So from the sunnah is to eat from it, as well as give it as a gift, and as well as give some in sadaqah. It's not permitted to eat from the obligatory sacrifice that comes from falling into a prohibited act in a state of ihram, or leaving off an obligation, as we mentioned before. This is called dammu jubran. So this is a sacrifice that has to be done because you have violated one of the rights of Hajj. So that is to be given in its entirety as charity, as a kafara, as an expiation for what a person has fallen into. Also, when it comes to the tawaf, the shurut of tawaf is one, intention, beginning from the black stone. From the things that is recommended is to kiss or touch it. If one is not able to, then you raise your hand and gesture to it, and you say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. And of the things that's also mentioned, Allahumma imanan bika wa tasdiqan bi kitabika wa wafa'an bi ahdika wa ittiba'an li sunnati nabiyyik Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's all the supplications one should learn if they're obviously going to go and perform Hajj or Umrah. The Kaaba should be to one's left. One should perform 7 complete circuits around the Kaaba, and one has to be free from ritual and physical impurities. You have to be in a state of tahara. How do you know that tawaf is like salah, except that you're permitted to talk during tawaf, as mentioned by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To be in a state of purification for the other rites, other tawaf is recommended but not obligatory. So for the other rituals, it's recommended but not an obligation to be in a state of tahara. Now, it's also recommended that when you do the tawaf al-ibtida, that you place the upper garment underneath the right armpit, so you expose your right shoulder. Now, and to lightly jog in the first 3 circuits of tawaf, and to walk the rest. If it's really packed, you do brisk walking is appropriate, but you'll find because of how packed it is, you're not able to jog. No. It is not recommended to run in other types of tawaf or do ibtida. No. So, in other types of tawaf, it says not recommended to do. So if you're just doing tawaf by yourself, that you run, and that you do ibtida, which is to place the middle of the upper garment under the right armpit and the end of the garment on the left shoulder. And that is during the times of Hajj. The prerequisites for sa'i, running between Safa and Marwa, then this is 1, you have to have intention, complete 7 laps that start from Safa. So Safa to Marwa is 1, back to Safa is 2. Like this is not 1, 2, back and forth, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 like this. Then when you get to Marwa, the last time, that's the 7th one, then you have finished the sa'i. During tawaf, during sa'i, of the things recommended is that one remembers and mentions Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one can recite Quran, one can read books of adhkar, anything like this is permitted. And then obviously understanding the sanctuary of the Haramain, the Al-Haram, the places where things are not to be done, such as hunting. No, there's no such thing as finding lost property and keeping it. You have to hand that in, and the likes. Cutting down trees, all of these things are not permitted within the Haram. However, there's an exception when it comes to 5 creatures that are all evil, that whether you're in a state of ihram, in the Haram, you're allowed to kill them. And they are mentioned to be al-ghurab, which is the crow, wal-had'a, which is the scorpion or the kite, and al-aqrab is the scorpion, and al-fa'ra, the mouse, wal-kalb al-aqur, and the rabid dog. Those things are permitted to be killed as an exception. They're not from the things that are hunted. When it comes to the hajj and aqiqah, that which is sacrifice of the animals, of the conditions that one is to bear in mind is, one, it has to be, if it's a lamb, it has to be no younger than half a year old, 6 months. And a thani, which is from the camels, it has to be that which is 5 years old. From cows, that which is 2 years old. From goats, that which is 1 year old. The Prophet mentioned 4 types of animals are not acceptable for sacrifices: a one-eyed animal which has clearly lost sight of one eye, a animal that which is clearly sick, a lame animal that has a limp, an animal with a broken leg with no marrow. Again, these are matters that are prohibited in terms of the types of animal that are to be sacrificed. The animal should be in a good state, free from defects. The more perfect the animal is, the better it is in terms of reward of sacrifice. And obviously the Prophet mentioned in the hadith of Jabir that we slaughtered the Messenger of Allah during the month of the year of Hudaybiyah, a camel for 7 and a cow for 7. 7 people can have a share in a camel or a cow. It is recommended for the father to perform the aqiqah, obviously for the newborn child, as we know, 2 for a boy and 1 for a girl from the sheep. The Prophet mentioned the boy is mortgaged by his aqiqah. Slaughter should be done for him on the 7th day. He should be given a name and his head should be shaved. That's the sunnah, is to be done on the 7th day after birth. Some of that slaughtered meat for aqiqah should be eaten, some given away as a gift, and some given as charity. The one who is slaughtering for you, and the one who does the slaughtering, is not to be given in payment some of the meat. Rather, you are to give them a gift or some charity. But as for saying that some of the meat is for you, then this is not correct. Or who's actually doing the slaughtering on your behalf. That's of the things that are mentioned. And we went through it quickly because we've passed the time of Hajj. When it comes to matters like Hajj and Ramadan, the sunnah is to go through it at the time, closer to the time when people are actually going to perform Hajj, or when Ramadan is coming, as we did already cover the book of Ramadan, fasting before Ramadan. Such will be the case when it comes to Ramadan coming, inshallah. We ask Allah to allow us to reach many of them upon goodness, ameen. And the same with Hajj. So we'll stop there, inshallah. Next week we're going to start Umdat al-Ahkam, the book of Hadith on fiqh. That will be on Wednesdays from 7 o'clock, inshallah ta'ala. A post will be sent out covering the fiqh of worship, matters to do with worship. Then we'll go back to another book on fiqh, and then maybe another book of ahkam of hadith again, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum, Allahumma salli wa sallam ala nabiyyina wa Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum.